Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Major updates as to what Red Bull are cooking with their driver lineup for next season. Who is going to partner Max Verstappen at the main team? Could it still be Yuki Tsunoda? But if it's not, what does that mean for their sister team? Especially Isack Hadjar will likely stay in the Red Bull program for sure. What about Liam Lawson? What about Tsunoda? Could they both be out the door, with rumours that Arvid Lindblad and another key protagonist in Formula 2 this season could also be joining the Red Bull stable? Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, I greatly appreciate it. Couple of updates for you all. Starting here, we talked about it yesterday that Lewis Hamilton's dog Roscoe was in seemingly urgent care, and I did wonder whether Hamilton would not be especially keen to go to Mugello today to do the Pirelli tyre testing that Ferrari was scheduled to do. That was confirmed yesterday that Hamilton will not be there for today for the Pirelli tyre test in the SF25 mule car, so Zhou Guanyu will be stepping in instead. And actually Hamilton gave an update on the situation today. It was, an important day for Hamilton, actually, because it was 4 years to this day when Hamilton secured his 100th Grand Prix victory at the Russian Grand Prix in Sochi, with that famous finish to the Grand Prix, as we well know, could have been Lando's first win. That had to wait some little while, but Hamilton did tweet this out today and put it on his Instagram as well. It's got well over 400,000 likes as of seeing this, and yeah, it must be a really difficult time for Lewis. I hope the Roscoe can pull through this one, but as he says, it is tough because I want to keep you all updated. Roscoe caught pneumonia again and was struggling to breathe. He was admitted into hospital and sedated to calm him down while they did checks on him, and during the process his heart stopped. They managed to get a heartbeat back and now he's in a coma. We don't know whether he'll wake up from this. Tomorrow we will try to wake him up. I'm by his side. Want to thank you all for prayers and support. So yeah, wishing the best of Roscoe. I think he's 13 years old. It's decent going from an English bulldog, but yeah, you can see how sad Lewis looks. So hopefully it all works out for the best. Even James Vowles and many others were giving their thoughts and, prayers, let's say, for the next couple of days. So Zhou Guanyu was therefore in the car instead in Mugello today, alongside Charles Leclerc, and we've got some footage of those moments, right? So this is pretty important for next year. You can tell, okay, it's difficult to tell exactly, but the cars go pretty fast. Now, there could be a couple of reasons for this. One of the reasons might be that they're running absolutely no downforce at all. And that's pretty much what will be the case right now. You can actually see it if you look at this image here on the Ferrari SF25 that they've modified for these 2026 tests. Of course, these tyres, we're not familiar because usually the tyres have some coloration on them, but obviously not with these because they are compounds they're testing for next year. But you can see the rear wing that Charles has on here and the front wing, very low downforce, with the intention to replicate the downforce levels in 2026, but also for Ferrari to get their own evidence as much as they can. There's a couple of other shots as well of exactly that today. But it wasn't just Charles Leclerc and Zhou Guanyu at Mugello doing some testing. It was also this man Romain Grosjean, who is officially back with Haas on the Formula 1 circuit, as it were. Now look, he's not going to be returning to racing full time, but it was actually a very cool moment to see Grosjean 5 years after his crash in Bahrain back in a Formula 1 car for the first time. So Haas were out there, I think, in a car that was a couple of years old. Of course, it was a bit wet today, right? So certainly the intermediate was getting a fair bit of use, as well, as we saw from those shots. Grosjean actually confirmed that this helmet that we saw yesterday that was designed by his kids, this was actually meant to be used at his final ever Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi 2020, but of course that never happened. So he wore it this time around, which I thought was really nice. Look how happy he looks, right, getting in for the seat fitting. So I thought this is a really cool moment, actually. I do wonder why it never happened with Mercedes. I think there are some questions on that, because we thought that he was going to get that test with Merc. That never happened. Here he is on the wet tyres, rolling it out of the garage as he gets some laps in the Haas. So I thought it was nice to see that happen. There was a little guard of honour as well going on here for Grosjean. So his day ended, he did the testing and he comes back into the pits, and all of the teams that were there were giving him a bit of a hand. So thought that was really nice, and I think we got a little bit of reaction to it as well. Actually, I've got about a minute or so. I'll just talk through this a little bit while we look at Grosjean in a Formula 1 car for the first time in quite some time. There has been a bit of talk, actually, as I just share this lap, on whether we could return to Mugello. Joe Soward put out his green notebook and he was talking about a few options. What if we which is actually Argentina, Buenos Aires, about the possibility of that. We know that there's been interest from Bangkok, right? The Thai potential street circuit. There's certainly a lot of money potentially going on there. We know that Madrid is getting that Grand Prix next season, which I don't know how good that's going to turn out to be. But Hockenheim are interested in getting back on the grid. I would love to see a German Grand Prix again. I think that Formula 1 kind of doesn't feel quite right, given there's still so much German interest not having a German Grand Prix. So there's definitely talks there, but I wouldn't expect that if we do return to Germany, it's going to be every year. I think it's going to be part of like a rotational circuit, kind of like what Spa is becoming. These corners at Mugello, by the way, are just absolutely spectacular in the wet, but let's not forget what the 2020 cars, especially the W11, were able to do around here a couple of years ago. But there's also Istanbul Park, right? The Turkish Grand Prix. There's been talk about that returning. But Joe Soward basically said that if Colapinto keeps his seat at Alpine, then there is a seriously decent chance that we might potentially return, or at least have an Argentinian Grand Prix. Now, it's not guaranteed at all. Colapinto is not guaranteed to keep his seat at all, but there is a big push right now and interest in Argentina because of Colapinto's position in having a Grand Prix there. So that's something which is not impossible to entirely rule out. We know that the Grand Prix in Imola, of course, is gone for next season, and yeah, we're pretty much coming up to the end of the lap now. So a little 2-minute segue as to what's happening, at least reportedly, in the world of calendars for next season. And we also have this shot with the Ferrari and the Haas next to each other on the track. So anyway, that's your update from Mugello today. Talking of Charles Leclerc, he had a couple of things to say on sprint races. There's been lots of drama about whether they're going to increase next season. Well, at least the season after that, we know almost certainly that they will be. Domenicali for some time has said, oh no, we're pretty happy with 6. Now he's saying, well, we might want to do 10, maybe 12. And then he's saying that, well, at some point we're going to have to make sure that every weekend is the same, just because then we know every promoter of every race weekend knows what they're getting themselves in for. Leclerc's not convinced it's a good idea, neither am I. I think the way Formula 1 is at the moment is where it should stay. I don't think we've got to reinvent anything. I think he says that specifically when it comes down to the idea of reverse grids, which I just don't think should come to Formula 1. Look, is Leclerc right that the current setup is pretty good? Could it get better? Maybe. But there is a good argument to say that the way that F1 is right now, with the 24 races we have on the calendar and the sprint races in there adding a little bit of excitement race weekend to race weekends, is maybe, some of the best that it's ever been, right? Now, look, they will continue to try and push that further. Certainly from a fan perspective, like if I was working for one of the teams, I think 24 races is probably a lot, especially given they probably want to push it to 25. Let's be honest, that's what the limit could currently be set at. More sprints they're going to want to push as well, because the promoters like it, because they can't necessarily sell tickets for a higher price precisely, but it does mean that they get more people there on most of the days. They can sell more other things to the fans at the circuit and all those other factors that are at play. So Leclerc's against changing much, and I think I'd kind of be on board with that. I think in many respects we've done a pretty good job in Formula 1 getting to the way the qualifying format currently is, which I think is pretty excellent top to bottom. The sprint weekends are much better than they were when things started out, when the sprints first came in. Can we do better? I think probably yes. Is the answer more sprints and reverse grids? I think probably categorically no. But intrigued to your thoughts on that. Let's talk about Red Bull. This is pretty funny. Max Verstappen was spotted, as we know, on a yacht with Toto Wolff not all that long ago. And we know what they had to say about this at the time. Max said, oh, well, yeah, maybe I was with Toto, but doesn't mean anything, right? Yeah, sure, I can spend some time with him on his yacht. Doesn't mean I'm going to sign for his team. But we all know that Toto thinks very highly, as he should, of Max Verstappen, and is somewhat concerned about giving George Russell a particularly longer-term deal, given that this relationship may bear some fruit. And Toto says, we did not discuss big sporting methods too much in the summer. It was more on, let's say, a personal level, right? So Max was here, I think Kelly was there, and of course Susie Wolff was there as well. So they pretty much had the whole family on Toto's yacht having a good time. And yeah, of course, I'm sure they were talking about personal stuff and whatever. It's the off-season at the end of the day when these pictures were taken, when it was spotted that Max was flying to Sardinia and Toto was there on his yacht, and all this stuff was going on at the time. Yeah, of course it's going to be on a personal level, but the personal level is also critical to the potential business relationship. So Toto, of course, given that he also still does not have a contract with his drivers for next season, is making it pretty clear that, yeah, okay, I like Max, we get on quite well, but there's nothing going on here, George. Don't worry about it. Whereas I think we know the reality of what Toto would probably like to do if he got the chance for next season and beyond. But speaking of Max's teammate at Red Bull for next year, and who knows about beyond, there is a good chance that if Red Bull don't deliver next year, Max is trying to get out of there. I think there's also a reason why Red Bull are so committed to trying to give Max the chance to win this year, because I don't think they think the chances are really there next season. So this is Yuki at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. You can actually tell from the little track map in the background. And he had a solid day out in Azerbaijan. Unfortunately for Tsunoda, every decent result or every decent performance that he's had as of late has always ended up getting overshadowed to some degree. The Dutch Grand Prix weekend wasn't great, but he wasn't, his pace wasn't totally shambolic at all compared to Max. But what did Hadjar do? He stuck it on the podium. In Baku, again, Tsunoda was pretty solid, decent in qualifying, not great, but in the end good enough. And in the race, he held his own, didn't really make any mistakes, didn't have the top end speed to overtake Lawson, but, it was Lawson, right, who was in front of him. A big rival of his for the drives next season, right? Now look, even Red Bull will probably tell you that the Racing Bulls is an easier car to drive and probably in the hands of many drivers actually a straight up faster car. Probably that's not the case anymore, though. I would say the Red Bull has clearly made some serious progress. Max is just disappearing down the road again like he did in 2023. So clearly that sister Red Bull should be capable of something. And in the end, despite probably having more pace than Lawson if he was in clean air, getting stuck behind him again didn't really spell the right picture for Yuki Tsunoda at the end of that Grand Prix. So as a result of this, this article here from Autosport on motorsport.com discussing how this is why Red Bull are not making their decision yet. But we have heard mixed opinions on this, because we heard some reporting from AMUS, then we heard some reporting from even Eric Van Haren said this, that the decision is made, Isack Hadjar will be a Red Bull racing driver next season. So I would be very surprised if that story changes, to be honest. Yes, Red Bull say, we've not made a decision yet, we are going to give it 3 more races effectively until the Mexican Grand Prix. Then the decision will be made, right? So we go Singapore, we go Austin, then we go Mexico. And after that, there will be 4 more races to go with, Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi to close out the season. So pretty much these next 3 rounds will be critical and the decision at that point will be made. But the question is whether that decision has kind of already been made. Yeah, Red Bull maybe don't want to ruin Isack Hadjar, putting him into the main Red Bull. We know how problematic that has been, but also next year's car could be more compliant. Like, it's probably going to be very complicated, but if there is a time to join Red Bull, it wouldn't be bad to join them when the car is starting from 0 for the cycle of the regulations. So I think it makes sense to put Hadjar in the car. Look, you might think give him more time to develop, and I get that logic, but after he's secured a podium in the sister team, it's very difficult to say no unless Tsunoda really kicks it up in the next couple of rounds. So I'm still expecting that to happen. The question then becomes, what do you do with the sister team, right? Because in my opinion, would Yuki want to stay at Racing Bulls, given that he's been demoted, assuming that he is, again from Red Bull? Because if you get the chance at Red Bull and then you get kicked out, your chances of going back are incredibly slim. Lawson, maybe there's a chance he gets another drive at Red Bull. I feel like it's relatively unlikely. They demoted him back down. He only got 2 races, but because he only got 2 races, maybe there's a chance there, right? Like if he really kicks up a gear for the rest of the season and for next season, there's maybe a chance they give him another go. But I think it's pretty slim. For Yuki, I think the chances of him getting another chance at Red Bull are incredibly slim if this season he gets kicked out at the end of it. So at that point, there's 2 questions. If you're Yuki, do you want to go back to the sister team, even if they would let you? On some level, well, maybe yes, because at least you've got a drive at that point in Formula 1. But the other argument is that you should just get out of Red Bull at that point, because it's clearly not working for you. Honda are not going to support you anymore, and you should go and speak to Alpine. You should go and speak to whoever you can, maybe Aston Martin, to try and get a drive somewhere else, even be a reserve, maybe somewhere for a season, and then try and get an opportunity. I can see some logic in that for Yuki as well, rather than even taking the opportunity to go down to the sister team again, even if Red Bull would grant him that. So Lawson is likely to stay there, I would say, but even that is not exactly a guarantee because of some interesting developments today. So, report has it that Helmut Marko has had some face-to-face meetings with Alex Dunne and his representatives. Now, this is Alex Dunne. He has had quite some incidents this season in Formula 2, famously in Monaco, and multiple other. He's probably been like the chief protagonist in the sense that every weekend you can watch Alex Dunne's arrow on the track map. There will be something interesting going on. He is very quick. He is kind of crash happy. He gets into a lot of interesting situations, but he certainly has turned heads. And I think if you're a Formula 2 driver, that's kind of what you want to do, right? You want people talking about you. And people have been talking about Alex Dunne this season. Irish driver. There's been some excitement about that as well. And he's the type of driver that Helmut Marko really likes, right? Like, he's the type of guy, the way that his personality is, the fact that he's got that raw speed, that Red Bull seem to quite like. There's similar tendencies maybe in Arvid Lindblad, who's also in Formula 2 and has been turning heads this season. Lindblad's been pretty up and down, to be fair, as has Dunne. Lindblad did have a pretty horrific weekend in Monza as well. That's not really helped his chances as of late. And he's, again, it's not like Lindblad has shown dramatic improvement over the course of the season so far, so there are arguments as to whether, was Antonelli really ready this season? I think, personally, Mercedes did the right thing promoting him. I am in favour of just throwing drivers in the deep end and seeing if they're going to swim. You know, that's actually how I would run my teams. I understand why people aren't so convinced about doing that and whether that's a great idea. But I see why teams do it, as long as you prepare them and everything the right way and, you know, maybe don't try and put too much pressure on them publicly, even if, of course, they are going to be under pressure if you're going to do that. The point is that Red Bull might be thinking twice about giving Lindblad a promotion. A few weeks ago, I would have said it was 95% likely Lindblad was getting the promotion, probably alongside Lawson, with Hadjar moving to the main team. That seemed the most likely scenario. Now all of a sudden there are questions as to whether they really want to rush him in. But if they don't want to push up Lindblad, then would they bring in Alex Dunne to their programme and put him in instead? Is that an option? Or is there actually another plausible world where both of those guys manage to get a drive and they have no one on their team with any sort of experience? Maybe this is the Racing Bulls way, right? Maybe this is the plan. Go back to it being a proper junior team and put two juniors in. Ralf Schumacher says that would certainly be an option, to have Verstappen and Hadjar at Red Bull and then Lindblad and Dunne get promoted. Because look, if I'm Red Bull, and I think Horner will probably have a different opinion on this to the way that Lauren McKees thinks about it, but is Lawson ever going to get promoted again, realistically? Because in my opinion, if you've got a driver in your B team who the chances of him getting promoted again are slim to none, just get rid of them, right? It's better for them, maybe. It's better for you. And Lawson has made some strides, but I still think his chances of actually getting another shot at Red Bull are very small. And I think the same would definitely be true for Yuki if he was to leave the main Red Bull team. So at that point, what's the point, right? Okay, maybe you keep him around to score some more points, but if the goal of your sister junior team is to find up-and-coming drivers who can be a potential Red Bull main seat driver, then, you know, maybe you want to consider just putting in two rookies effectively and just being like, all right, lads, away you go. See what happens. So there are rumours that this is actually a possibility, that Lawson and Yuki could both be gone in some world. I think the only thing that we know for sure is that Isack Hadjar is not going anywhere and he is likely to partner Max Verstappen next season. Just before we finish the video, I wanted to post you guys past this. Formula Racers say who will win the championship. Now this has 14,000 votes. If I hit the refresh, we'll probably see it's gone up a bit. As you know, it's exactly the same. But look, who's going to win? I've voted Piastri. He's got a sizable lead. I don't think that Norris really has what it takes to come back. But I did think the Verstappen piece here is quite remarkable, right? I mean, look, I think Norris could still make the comeback. It's 25 points. It's doable, but it's relatively unlikely. I find it incredible that the Formula 1 community seems to think that Norris's chances of winning are roughly 10%. Piastri's chances are about 5 times that. Verstappen, people think, has well over a 3 times chance of Lando to win this championship. So, look, I think Piastri is the correct answer statistically, for sure. But I think Max's chances of winning, like, I put them the other day at about 5%. I think I might bump that up a little bit based on Piastri maybe feeling the pressure in Baku and some other belief maybe that the McLaren drivers may continue to underperform to a certain extent. But it relies on Max winning like every weekend and the Red Bull being the best car pretty much anywhere, which is still a long shot, I think. So, look, I still believe the chances of Lando winning this title are greater than the chances that Verstappen wins this title. But I do think that it's getting a little bit marginal between the pair of them. So very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.